Shem Hamay Ki Che Vishveshvari Mati Ki Che Bole Baba Ki Che. As we come to the end of the sacred month of Savan, the month of Lord Shiva, I thought I would read one of the final chapter in the Shiva Purana, retold by Ramesh Menon. On a golden evening of that kalpa, his Shiva Purana ended. Veda Vyasa's pupil, Sutta, blessed the rishis of the Naimisavana and vanished into a sunset the color of blood. The next morning, the rishis were to perform the ritual ablution to mark the end of their yajna. At Brahma's behest, Saraswati herself became a river in the holy Vana and flowed down there for them to bathe. Shouting her name, they plunged into her waters and offered tarpana to the gods. Purified by the Saraswati, they set out for Kashi on the banks of the Ganga to worship at the Avimuktesvara Jyotirlinga. The cadences of the Shiva Puranas still echoed in their minds. For days they traveled, and one evening, shading their eyes against the setting sun, they saw the pristine Ganga glowing down the mountain. With cries of joy, they raced one another to her golden currents. They plunged into her, convinced she would wash their sins. A short way downstream, they saw another group of rishis bathing. As those munis emerged from their immersions, the sky filled with a mass of light, as if 10 suns had risen there at once, while the Namisa hermits stood aghast. Those other rishis rose bodily out of the river into the air and were subsumed into the tremendous refulgence. The next moment, the light and they both vanished. From on high, a voice spoke to the rishis who had been listening to the Shiva Purana. It said, "Rishis, that was the Jyoti of Maheshvara Linga you saw. Hearing the Purana has purified you, and a great city awaits you in the next world." The rishis stood in the river awestruck. Hearing the Shiva Purana from Sutta had made ashes of the sins of all their bygone lives, and bhakti welled in their hearts like the Ganga herself. In the sacred dusk, they knew even moksha was not far. The voice spoke again to them. Munis, climb Mount Meru to where Sanat Kumara sits in Dhyan. The rishis climbed golden Meru, their hearts alight with a huge intimation of adventure, of mystery. High on that mountain and wide as a small sea was a lake called Skanda Saras. Their bodies airy, they climbed into the lake on feet light with faith. They saw the deep lake through which light passed unbent. It was so clear. Slabs of unearthly crystal paved the shores. Incandescent flowers out of dreams bloomed on its banks, and upon its waters, lotuses of another world floated. So blue was the water that the sky seemed to have fallen into it. Steps made of the darkest turquoise led to the edge of the lake. The rishis climbed down in soft exhilaration and gathered lotuses, lilies, and holy water in leaf cups for their worship. Unperturbed herds of golden deer drank where the hermits bathed and offered worship. The chill water enlivened their spirits. They heard various birds calling on the lake of wonder, while in rustling whispers the water spoke back to birds and to the deer. When they climbed up again to a place of vantage above the lake, with a cry, Sunaka, the head of the rishis, pointed to a northern bank. There an unearthly luminescence seemed to grow out of the rushes, casting its aura high into the air. Sanat Kumara sat under a kalpa vriksha, the last of its kind growing on earth in this age. Other rishis and yogis were adoring Brahma's son, just awakened from his samadhi. The rishis ran around the lake and prostrated themselves at his feet. The Radiant One asked, "What brings you here, my children?" Sunaka, the head of the rishis, told him about the Purana they had heard in the Namisavana, of the Tower of Light they saw over Kashi, and the voice that had sent them here. Sanat Kumara raised a hand over them in blessing. The sky erupted with a tumult of Dandubis. When they looked up, the living azure was lit up by another sun risen there, a Vimana like a jewel, an immense ship of the firmament, ringed by 100 lesser ones, flew down at thought's blinding speed until it filled the sky. It was relucent and so alive it seemed to breathe. The air was full of heavenly music. The sages saw mighty Shiva ganas in the splendid Vimana, apsaras of impossible beauty, Rudra women, Siddhas, Brahmarishis, Gandharvas tall and long-haired, Yakshas with luminous skies, with skins, and grave centurion Kimpurushas, divine beings, all of them, between crystal panels that covered the great Vimana. Sunaka's rishis saw a golden banner with a fighting bull emblazoned on it. At the helm of that ship was Nandan, Lord of the earth, in his human form, with his wife Suyasa beside him. He was three-eyed and held Trishul. They knew that in his master's name he wielded absolute power over the rulers of the stars. Behind the Gana Lord, they fancied an immense and glowing shadow stood, a crescent moon in the matted locks, a serpent king around its blue throat, but they could not be certain it was there at all. Crying out in ecstasy, Sanat Kumara threw himself on the ground before the vision in the sky. Nandan raised his hand in a blessing. Sanat Kumara said, "These rishis of the 6 clans performed a yagya in the Naimisavana. They have come here at Brahma's instance." Nandi beckoned serenely, and by a beam of light with his hand, the rishis rose into the chariot of the sky. As they flashed away starwards like time with a look from his eye, Nandishvari cut away their pasas, the silvery umbilica that bound them to the earth, with vestigial memories of 1,000 lives. Oceanic freedom overwhelmed the sages, the bliss of moksha and the knowledge of Shiva, the auspicious one. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Bole Baba Ki Jai.